fire them. I'm like, yeah, I don't like gay people. Get out of here. By the way, I'm bisexual, so I'm not being homophobic. If I do that, I will literally get sued out of my mind because that's illegal.
How it
CEOs
can
do not have wait, hold on. You're not getting my point. CEOs do not
your
have
point is stupid.
unprecedented hold on. CEOs do not have unprecedented power over their companies. They are allowed to do things in the company. Yes, they have authority over the company. Yes, but authority does not imply that you can do whatever you want to the people underneath you.
Yes, you can. That's why you're the CEO of the company.
No,
No.
you can't.
You're the
No,
creator.
did you not hear my example?
That's your company. You own the company.
No, it doesn't matter if I own the company. There are things that I'm restricted
Bro,
from
your
doing. I
example
cannot
was stupid.
fire.
That's why I was trying to
No, no,
refute it.
no, it's not stupid. It's
It
something
is
that actually,
stupid.
do you think you could just fire someone because they're gay? Do you think
No,
you
you
can do
can't.
that?
Unless that gay
Why?
person
I own
did
the
something that's
company.
against the policy.
Yes, but
That's
I'm not
it. That's what
allowed.
I'm trying
I'm
to
not
say.
allowed.
My
No,
gosh.
no, no. You're not. You're not
Your
getting my
point is
point.
stupid.
You're not getting my point. You're not
No,
getting
you're
my point.
stupid.
No, hold on. You replied to deconstruction, saying, "Oh, God can command grape because He's God. He's the one in authority. He can do whatever He wants." And you used the example of a
There's
CEO. A
nowhere in
CEO
the
So you used the fact that a CEO owns a company and therefore has authority over that company, and you said a CEO can fire whoever he or she wants. But I'm telling you that that is not the
if they
case.
break the law.
Even CEOs have a restriction on who they can fire and why they can fire them. You can't just fire people for whatever reason.
See, that's my point here. You come up here and assume that I'm saying that the CEO can fire them for whatever. I'm saying the laws that he set for the company of his company or her company, if whatever person, gay or not gay, break those laws, that CEO have every right to fire them. That's my point.
Yes,
And you're
but
coming
can
up
they?
here and
But
saying
can he
something different.
fire? Can he fire them for whatever reason?
If they break the law,
Not the not the law, the company's policies.
yeah, the law is
Um,
the company's policy. Yes, gay or not gay, if they break the company's policy, I have every right or her to fire that person. It doesn't matter
right,
what or who
right,
you are.
right. So now this you
That's my
recognize
whole
that this
point.
is not. Yes, I know, but you recognize that this is not analogous to
I'm
deconstruction's
using that
point because
analogy to
his whole
describe God, how
point.
God is. God is saying,
No,
God
no,
laid
no, no,
out
no,
the
no, no.
rules. God already laid out the rules for us to follow. He doesn't care if you're gay or not gay. He doesn't care
He
if
does.
you're
He
atheist.
does.
He doesn't care if you're a Christian.
He
If he
does.
if he sees that you doesn't follow his laws, he will kick you out.
But
That's
that's not
as
what
simple as that.
deconstruction is talking about. Deconstruction is
It's
talking
simple
about
as
a
that.
case. Hold on. Deconstruction is talking about a case where a man cheated on his wife. Well, not. I don't know if
You
I
don't
would
even
call
know
it
what we're
cheating,
talking
but he
about.
slept with another man. Slept with another woman and got her husband unalived. And then his response to this was to have his wives, who are innocent people, be raped.
It
That's what
doesn't
we're
say that
talking
either.
about. It does say that. Yes, it absolutely says that.
Show me.
It's in 2 Samuel
Yeah,
12,
we've
I
already
think.
read the verse. We've already read this verse so many times,
Right.
and you get stuck on like, what is the word will? But you have to at least be honest enough to say you are not
Then I
willing.
use
You're
the
not
example.
willing, Mr. Bruce. Let me finish. You have to be at least willing to say that you are not willing to think of your God critically, right?
I am willing. That's why I gave you the example. We are blaming God, but we're not blaming David.
Okay, so then
David
on David.
specifically
Okay,
said
look,
he
I'm saying
sinned.
David. I'm saying David did something wrong. I will agree with you on that. David did something
Yeah.
horrible. And this is how God pays him back. And what we're thinking about now is this a good payment?
Yes.
Okay?
It
It
doesn't matter
How?
is.
what
You
we
think
think.
rape is good?
It doesn't matter what we think. Like we need to look at from
So
God's
that
point of
means
view.
you're not
It
able to
works
think
very
about
much
your
No,
no
I'm
God
matter
saying
what you
critically.
we
do.
need to look at from His point of view in the book, not our point of view, right? Because there's
Well,
so
It
for
many
doesn't
one,
questions.
matter.
There's so
go
many
ahead.
questions in our head. Like, okay, if I was in God's position, I could have done this. I could have do this. Like, if I was God, this is what's going to change. See, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, we
None
have
of
a new
those
guest.
questions can be answered.
We have a new guest. Let's let him speak. Atheist, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Fine and dandy.
All right,
Right?
cool. Sorry, I'm using out a new pair of earbuds, so I just wanted to make sure. I understand where we were trying to go with this whole company example thing, Mr. Bruce, but I think the one of the biggest problems is that, well, yes, if a employee broke the rules, that they could then be fired. No one's arguing that. The issue is like, what can the retaliation be? It's that they are let go from the company. The CEO can't just do whatever they want willy nilly because they were that person's boss. You seem to be excusing this when it comes to God by saying that God can do whatever he wants. And you said that God laid out the laws, there was a law broken, so there's got to be a thing. Well, here's my question. If the law is so important and must be followed, then why didn't God follow his own law when it gives the unalivement penalty to those who commit adultery or take other people's wives? Because that punishment was already laid out by God. God should have enacted that punishment by judging David accordingly. But instead, he decided to take the punishment off him and put it onto an innocent infant and his wives to suffer the punishment for him. How could that be compatible with a good and just nature?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was gonna say you answer your own question. He punished David for that. And for the
He
babies,
didn't,
as
though.
you said, all right, why did not God let the baby live out his life? See, that's what I'm saying. I don't know the answer to those questions. I am not God, right? That's why we put ourselves in that situation that, oh, if I was God, this punishment would be different, right? But it says here that God did that. So
Yes, and
there's so
I'm
many
asking you
things
how
come
that's
to your
good
head
and just, and
and it's
you're not
unanswered.
saying.
Yeah, because I mean the thing is, whenever David goes to Nathan and says, "Oh, I've sinned," you know, um, "I've sinned against the Lord," Nathan says, "Now the Lord has put away your sin, and you shall not die." But the baby can't do that. The
Yeah, and
wives
you
don't have
know,
that opportunity to do that.
right? And then there, you know, in the Bible, I'm pretty sure you guys know it, that God says these babies will be in heaven.
No, there's no verse that says that.
Really?
There's no verse that says that babies that unalive go to heaven.
All right,
Even,
I'll be
even,
back.
even,
I'll
wait,
be
So,
wait,
back.
hold on, hold on, hold
I'll
on,
be
hold on,
back.
hold on, wait, Bruce.
Go ahead.
Even if I'm gonna grant you that assumption, does that make it right to unalive people? Like, I don't think that if I went around unaliving babies, that you'd go, oh, well, I mean, it's fine. The baby's just gonna end up in heaven anyways. I don't think you'd say that, right?
yeah, I see that as just an excuse. And
I was
I'm
gonna say,
asking,
Mr.
and I'm
Bruce, your
asking for the
teacup.
justification of why this judgment is good and compatible with justice.
And it kind of ties into why Christian nationalists are more interested in money and power. I'm going to tie it in some way, and I'm going to find a way to do it. It ties in because when we're not able to think critically about their God, they're able to do anything they want in order to gain power and money, and we write it off as, well, this is God. It could be heinous, it could be cruel, and if it's not against us, even if it is, we can write it off spiritually as, this was God doing it, not the people in power.
And
Um,
see, I was agreeing with you on your prompt because I see it in church with other people. You know, that's what I'm saying. Like God doesn't care if you're a Christian or gay or an atheist or whatever you are. If God sees that your action does not align with his words, you know where you're going if you believe in God. That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, evil can be found in church as well. I'm not here to disagree about that question that you have on your wallpaper. I agree with your question. because I see it myself in church. There are people in church that actually does stuff like that, and those people are the reason why other people leave church. But if you're really a true Christian, as God said, Jesus said, love your God, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbors as yourself.
Yeah,
The moment I try to hate them for what they're doing, am I really displaying God's love to them, or I'm just trying to be another one of those other people?
that's great. That's great mindset to have.
That's
However,
what I'm saying.
I'm pointing out how whenever we justify God like unaliving babies or causing women to be raped in public, these things also have implications on how we see the world, right? And so whenever bad things happen around us, political or otherwise,
Then you
we
can't blame
tend to
God.
justify it through spirituality. Do you not
Then you
see that
can't
could be a
blame God.
problem?
That's what I'm trying to say. You can't
Well,
blame God for
How
the
can we
well,
action
not
of
blame
those
Bruce.
God?
individuals.
Well, Bruce, if God is the one that's given these laws and ways to act and live, how can we not blame him if he's the one telling us to do this?
Yeah, I mean, how can you not blame God for? I mean, this is God's punishment to David, right?
Right? And what did David say? He said he sinned. He
Yeah,
committed
and
evil
God said, "Okay, I
against
put
God.
away your sin.
That's what
You're
I'm
not
trying
gonna
to
be
say
unalived."
here. Like we're blaming God,
But the
but we're
rest
not
of it
blaming the people.
happened.
We're not blaming the people that is misusing God's name.
Who's
Oh
misusing
my
God's
Okay,
days,
name
bro, what are
here?
you talking
That's what I'm
about?
trying to say here. Like we're
Well,
blaming God,
Bruce.
but yet David said here he himself committed evil against God.
Yes,
Why are
Bruce,
we not blaming
but you're
David?
not. Yeah, but you're not listening. We are also blaming David. David did a bad thing. The only thing is when David is judged by this good and just being, God decides to put away his sin and decides to punish innocent people that had nothing to do with the crime. And we don't recognize that as justice. And I am still waiting for an answer to my question. Can you tell me where the justice is in giving the punishment to innocent rather to the guilty?
The justice of taking the baby's life?
Where is the justice in dispensing the judgment onto innocence rather than the guilty?
I don't know.
Then how can you say that this God is good and just and should be followed?
Because everything he does is good.
I'm asking you to explain that in this instance, and you're saying you don't know. And if you don't know, then you cannot say this
No,
God
I
is
say
good.
I don't know what is the justice
Is justice
in
good?
that taking the baby's the innocent life while if that's why I said that's why I used the CEO analogy. We're gonna look at this is God the creator,
Is justice good?
right? He yeah, it's good.
Okay, and God is
It's
good, right?
great. Yeah, he is good.
So God would give out proper justice. Where is the justice in dispensing the judgment onto innocents, like infants and innocent women, rather than the people who committed the crime? Especially when the law that this judge also gave is clear of how to handle it, which is the guilty person should be unalived. But this judge decided not to do that and to instead put other horrible things onto innocent people. Where's the justice in that?
Yeah, that's why I'm gonna go back to the same answer. Like I said, those questions that we have, yeah, only God knows the answer to those questions.
Okay,
I don't know the
I,
answer to
I
that
I
question.
completely accept your I don't know. I think it's a valid response, but my entire point to this is that if you cannot tell me what the justice is or where the good is in this, you cannot say that your God is good or just. You can say that you think or you hope he is, but you cannot say that he is 100% or factually good or just because we are bringing up examples that you are unable to explain, and it seems like you don't even recognize how it can be good and just. You cannot claim that this God is good or just.
See, that's why I say like we have to look at from God's view. He is the creator.
If
If
I
he
if I
says
if I
that,
looked at the Schmolikost from Schmittler's point of view,
Can I finish my point?
Do you think that that's the answer?
Can I finish my point?
No, because this is your point. Your point is saying we need to look at this from God's point of view, and we'll be able to see
Exactly,
most likely how the
you're not
justice is.
going to. You're
So
not willing to.
if I said you just need to look at the Smollett through Schmittler's point of view, then you'll see how it was right. Do you not see the problem here?
What was right with Hitler's?
Do you not see the problem in this logical way of thinking?
No, what was right with Hitler?
That wasn't what I was saying. I'm asking you about your
Well, I
logic.
don't know.
Your
You
logic.
kind of brought up Hitler, so that's why
Yes,
I'm asking.
yes.
What was
And
right
let
No,
with
me
Hitler?
explain.
Bruce.
Let me explain it, Bruce. You are saying that, oh, we don't understand why X happened. We don't understand why X is good or just. But we know that the judge is good and just. We just need to look at it from his point of view. Well, anyone could say that. I could talk to a schmatzi today who could tell me, well, if you just look at the Schmalikoff through Schmittler's point of view, you'll see how it was right. That logic doesn't follow that just because you look at it through someone else's point of view, you'll see how it's right. You need to give the
Well, how can
actual
you
argument.
compare Hitler to God?
Hold on. You need to give the actual argument with the justifications why it is good and right. You can't just say, well, so and so thought it was, so there you go.
No, I'm saying, how can you compare Hitler with God?
I
Like, what's the similarity
No,
here?
hold
It
on.
wasn't
Hold
so
on.
much that it was a comparison, that it was what would be known as like a reductio, which is just an exercise to show whether or not you have consistency in the way you think. And what is being pointed
Right.
out to you is that what you are pleading for is for a consideration of the party that is doing the things that we observe as dark and, twisted, and that, well, what we need to really do to determine whether or not that action was right or just is look at it from the person's perspective who is carrying out this action.
And that's what I was saying, that this ties into the prompt that way, because if we are able to look at the evil actions and justify them spiritually in the Bible, we're actually vulnerable to doing that in real life. And so that's with how we agree that Christians are power hungry. We agreed when you first came up. Then I think that this is an important point to point out, I guess, because this is also a way that they take advantage of people.
Right, and
This
I'm
train of
saying that
thought,
I
this way
don't
of
blame
thinking.
God for that. I blame those people.
But what about when God's the one commanding it or carrying it out, or he's the one that's attributing the actions to himself? So like when he said, I will take your wives and give them to someone else, and he will sleep with them in broad daylight. That's not someone else, doing it and then people blaming God for it. That's God actively taking
Yeah, but
credit
the
for what's
question
about
is,
to
why
happen.
did God say that?
No, the question was that just?
But why did God say that?
We already
Yeah.
went over why, and we agree.
Yeah.
Then it is
David
just.
did some fucked up shit.
Then it is
Okay?
just
So
It's
How is
wait.
it
just to make
just?
innocent people
I
because
pay for the
this is
crimes of someone
God.
else.
Oh my goodness.
just because it's
So
God
how
doesn't mean it's just. We're asking you to give the
See how
actual
you guys
points
are
for it.
proving my point?
no,
You
we're
guys
not.
just don't. You guys don't want. You
We're
guys just
trying
want
to
to
keep you
excuse
on
David,
point.
So
We're
but
I
trying to
blame
guess
keep
God.
you on
the
point, bud.
question would be,
No, you
what
guys
is
are
just about
excusing
making
David, but blame
innocent
God.
people pay for the crimes of other people?
My goodness. You
Like
guys
what?
blaming God, but excuse David.
No,
No, I'm
No,
listen.
not
we're
excusing
That's
David.
exactly
analyzing.
what you
Wait a
guys are
minute.
doing.
Everybody, hold on. We're analyzing his form of punishment. So, this is a critical look of God. That's why I asked you earlier, Mr. Bruce, are you able to look at God critically? And you said you are. And this is showing me that you're lying. Now, where do
How?
liars go, Mr. Bruce?
How?
Where do liars go?
To hell?
Okay, do you want to
How am I
burn?
lying?
So, the thing is, you need to be honest with yourself, and you need to be
But
honest
how am
with
I
us.
lying?
Can you be critical about God? Can you have a critical perspective of God?
In what way? You're asking me to be critical with God.
Right. So the question was God's punishment proportionate to the crime that David committed?
That is
Was the
just?
punishment that God handed down justice?
Yes.
So how if David is the one that did the crime, making 10 women and an innocent child bear the brunt force of those consequences, of those actions, justice, especially when there was already a law that determined what the punishment for David's crime should be.
That is just.
So God said in Deuteronomy that any man who sleeps with a married woman, if anyone sleeps with a married woman, both of them are to be stoned and put to unalivement. So when
Right.
David slept with Bathsheba, he slept with a married woman. The punishment was unalivement for David and Bathsheba. If God is justice and he holds people to the law, why then, instead of punishing David directly for his actions, he had 10 women, and like I said, an innocent child, and innocent women bear the weight of that punishment? What was just about that?
Okay, I see where you're coming from. So, God taking away the baby and the woman was the punishment for David. But then you guys are asking me, what is just for God taking away the woman and the baby?
Yeah, what was just about making
Even
innocent
though
people
taking away the
bear the
woman and
brunt
the
of the
baby is the punishment
consequences
for David,
for something they didn't do?
right?
Yeah, because like David's wives didn't covet Bathsheba and unalive Uriah the Hittite, right? And the child that David and Bathsheba bore did nothing to cause this problem. Why are they the ones that are being used as tools for punishment when God should have just punished David directly himself?
Yeah, God did punish David. That's why David wrote the whole
No,
book
he
of
didn't. He didn't, though. Like, he didn't punish David. Like,
So,
David isn't the one that got raped.
so
David isn't
if
the
I
Did you
one
may,
who
read
had
the
to
whole
suffer
book
for
of Psalms?
7 days.
Have you read the book of Psalms?
Have you
If you
read?
read
Do
the
you
whole book
remember
of
us
Psalms, you
reading,
understand why.
Mr. Bruce? Do you remember us reading this Second Samuel chapter
Yeah, I'm still in that
12?
chapter. I still
Okay,
have
in
my Bible right here.
13, in 13, remember we already read it. David said to Nathan, I
No,
have
we
sinned
didn't read
against the
all of it.
Lord.
We didn't read
Nathan
all of
said
it.
to David, now the Lord has put away your sin. You shall not be unalived. This is what God is saying, okay? So we already went over that David could ask forgiveness and address his sin, and the Lord put away it. But his unborn child couldn't do that. His wives couldn't do that. They didn't get that opportunity.
and if I may ask, you said that this was a punishment for David because his son and his wives suffered. Then that would again, it seems like just an extra layer to answering my question of please explain how this judgment is good and just, because I would not accept if a judge said, well, so and so, you did a bad thing. You said you were sorry though, so we're going to take your son, put him in jail, and we're going to take your wives and do something with them. Um, I would not accept that as judgment. The judgment should be or justice, because the judgment should be passed to the person who committed the crime. So again, I this just goes back to my question. Explain how this judgment is good and just, because we still don't know why punishing innocents for the crimes of the guilty is justice.
Like I said, God is the creator. God can take away. God can put
That's not an answer
like
to my
like just
question.
like the just like the story of the flood,
That's not an answer to my
right?
question.
Because God can
I
do
am
whatever the
answering the
fuck he
question. You
wants.
just don't like it.
It's not answering my
It's
question.
I'm telling you the answer to your question.
No, you're
Yeah,
you're
the answer
you're
to your
saying the
question
judge is
seems
the
to be that
judge,
it's
and the
Who?
judge can
That's
do
why I
whatever
asked
because he's the
that's why I
judge.
asked the host. That's why I asked the host the same question. Who is God according to the story?
I'm asking you to explain the judgment and how it's compatible with being good and just. We don't even have to
I
mention
told
God
you
at all.
he's the creator. Who
No,
is
so.
God
we
in the
should be able
Bible
to
according to the
separate.
Bible?
We should be able to separate who the judge is
Who
in
is
this
God according to the
situation.
Bible?
Just tell me
Preacher,
how the judgment is
preacher,
compatible
who
with
is
being good
God
and
according
just.
to the Bible?
A
Again,
monster.
that's not answering my question.
Who is God according to the Bible, preacher?
A monster.
Yeah, you can call him a monster, but according to the Bible, who is
Yeah,
Well,
God?
that's
this
what I
is
said.
how I
According to the
think that
Bible, he's a monster.
Okay,
I
I'll
think
say
the
that
best way.
he's the creator. All right,
Wait, can you guys
God
hear
said
me?
he's the creator.
Yes, I can hear you.
Our Father heavens,
Okay,
he's
great. Mr.
So
Bruce.
what I'm trying to say
So
here
the
is that
best,
it
I'm
doesn't
going to give
matter
you a
the
tip. Hold
way you
on,
think.
Mr. Bruce. Give me a second. I want to give you a tip. When we think about God, think about a king, right? Because you said who's God in the Bible? He's like the supreme ruler, especially over Israel, right? So in Israel, he's the God over Israel, and especially in early context. So uh, when you think about God, the best way to think about him is like a king. So kind of like what atheist preacher was saying. If a king was to say, okay, look, you did this bad thing, you unalived someone, and you stole his wife, you are really wealthy, and I'm going to punish you. I'm going to cause your wife to have a miscarriage, and I'm going to cause men in the town to take your wife out and rape her in public.
Can I
Okay?
read what David said?
Is that a good king?
Can I read what David said?
No. Answer my question. Is
I
that a
don't know.
good
I
king?
didn't hear anything about your question because
Okay, then listen, Mr. Bruce.
can I read what David said about the child?
No, I'm
Well, why
asking you
don't
a
you
question.
listen
You're
to the question and answer
Because
the
you guys are
question and
asking me
engage with
about
what
the
you're being
child, but
asked instead
David
of
said
running?
something
yeah.
too. I'm
I
still
don't
in the
care what
book.
David said for a minute. So listen, after you answer my question, you can read us whatever you want. If a king did this, if a king went to someone and said, okay, you did something horrible, I'm going to cause your wife that's pregnant to have a miscarriage. I am going to cause the other wives that you have to be raped in public, right? Would you think that this king was good?
No.
There you go. And that's the best way to think about God critically,
All right. Can I
as
read
a
what
supreme
David said?
king. So you just admitted that God is a bad king.
Sure, whatever. But can I read what David said?
And it doesn't
Sure,
matter.
whatever.
No, because you guys are using that analogy as it seems like
No, because this is the
God
most
here is
honest you've
bad.
been in this whole conversation,
Is
and you
bad for doing
admitted that
that.
we were right, and that's the thing. And now you're going to
Well,
try
I'm
to
not.
walk
I
that
didn't say
back.
you were right or wrong.
You agreed with us that this would be a bad king, that this would be injustice.
Okay, I'm gonna read about what David said about the child.
Oh my gosh, this is not relevant.
And he said, while the child was yet alive, I fasted and went, for I said, who can tell whether God will be gracious to me that the child may live? But now he is dead, wherefore should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he shall not return to me.
So, how
And
does this
then,
make it less fucked up that God tortured this poor child and
who
raped
can
10 women?
tell whether God will be gracious to me that the child may live? Who can tell God?
Why was
That's what
why
I'm
was
trying to say
David
here. None
why
of
was
us can tell
David
God
praying those
anything.
days? Mr. Bruce, why was David praying those days?
What?
Why was David in
What brought
sackcloth and
David to
ashes?
prayer?
His sin?
No.
No,
His
it was
Why
sin.
was he wasn't his child born in suffering?
suffered for 7 days before unaliving.
It says here that when his servant did not want to tell him that the child is dead. In the same
Right.
book, Samuel chapter
Wasn't
12.
David really upset about the fact that this child was suffering for like 7 days before finally unaliving?
I'm pretty sure he was. But he was
Yeah.
upset
What was
more of
so?
himself.
So what did that child do to deserve suffering?
Nothing. Okay?
So if the
But the
child
reason why
deserved
that child
nothing,
suffered,
hold on. So if the
the reason
child
why
didn't,
that child suffered was because of David.
yeah. So what's just about that? An innocent being is suffering because of the actions of someone else who is guilty. What's justice there? How is that justice?
Like I said, God is the creator. God
You
can
see,
take away, God can
you
put.
walked it back.
The king is the king.
That's what
The
that's
king
what
is the
that's what
king.
it
Yeah,
says here.
the king is
David
the
He can
said,
do
king, the
whatever
judge is
he
the
wants.
judge,
who
God
can
is
tell
God.
whether God will be gracious to me?
The
Yeah,
president's the president.
and I wanted to address that actually, Mr. Bruce. You said,
Who
who
can
are we
tell
to tell
God?
God that He can be gracious to me? You are, you're pretty much going for a might makes right situation. God is in charge. He's top dog. What He says goes. And that's
Yeah,
just that sucks. So in doing so, you are
yeah.
completely
According to you.
rejecting. Hold on. In doing that, you are rejecting a system of fairness and justice. And we are asking you. about what is fair about the situation, what is just about this judgment, and you are ignoring that. You're saying it's good and just while also claiming
No,
that
I'm
this
not
God
ignoring. I'm
does not
saying
have to
that
be
is
held
just.
accountable to any sort of form of what we would call good or justice.
I'm saying that is just. When you're asking me about
Then
what is
explain
just
it.
about God taking away the
Explain
baby,
it.
I'm saying that is just.
Explain
God can
why.
do what he wants.
Explain that. I don't
God
understand
can
why
do
God
what
is
he
God.
wants.
Okay, so it's not a so you are agreeing with me. It is not a system about justice and fairness. It is a system about might makes right. God is the mighty one.
For
So what God
us.
says goes.
For us. Not for God. For us. You and me. Is for you. That's what I said earlier. God doesn't care whether you're a Christian.
He
God doesn't
does.
care whether you're atheist.
He
God
does. Yes.
doesn't care who you are.
Yes, he
God
does.
already gave us the instruction we need to follow. And if we don't follow it, then you know where you're going.
Okay,
It's
so let
simple.
me
It's
ask
simple as
you
that.
this then.
Very
Let's try
simple.
a
It's
different
your choice.
question.
Okay?
So
That's why I
God
say,
gave
like, hold on, hold
law
on. I
in
want to finish,
Deuteronomy.
Thunder.
Go
That's why I
ahead.
say, like, there's so many questions that we have in our head, like, oh, if I was in God's position, I wouldn't do this, this wouldn't happen, things would change. But those are just unanswered questions that we cannot even answer for ourselves, no matter what.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bruce. Go ahead, Thunder.
Yeah. So like it seems to be that your position that it's just because God can just do whatever he wants.
I mean, come on, man. You know the Bible, and you
I
know
know
that
I
his
do know
action,
the
he
Bible. Yes.
basically can do whatever he wants.
Yeah. So that means at the very least that his justice is
You
arbitrary
just don't
then.
like it. You just don't like his character. That's it.
Yeah.
I
Like
don't like
why
his
would
Yeah, that's
that?
character.
it. You just don't like it. Then you
Yeah.
made your choice. You made your choice that you don't believe in this God, and that's your choice.
No, I
Yeah.
can't choose my beliefs.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
you
don't get to
just
choose
did.
your
That's why you're an
beliefs.
atheist.
No. Yeah. I've been convinced that gods aren't that I have
If
not been convinced
Christianity was
by God.
easy, if
Yeah.
if
So,
living if
well,
if
Mr.
living
Bruce,
for God
my
was
question
easy,
is
then
I get to
everyone would
ask.
be Christians.
Hold on. Thunder has been trying to ask you a question, Mr. Bruce. Let's let him ask.
Did you know that the law in Deuteronomy states that if anyone sleeps with a married woman, that both of them are to be put to unalivement?
Right. You said that once already.
Yeah, so that means that under the law, right? If we apply the idea of justice and that the law is fair, the law is balanced, that the crime matches the punishment, and that the punishment is applied equally and unilaterally to all people. So, if we know that there was a law at the time that said if a married man, if somebody lays with a married woman, both of them are to be stoned to unalivement because of that, what is just for the people who had to be stoned to unalivement for this crime, but then David was spared that?
Yeah, you just answered your question. God said it. That's why I say God is the creator. God can take away, God can put.
Mr.
So God
Bruce.
said it. God
You're just
said it
not
himself. I
engaging.
will take away your
We
sin.
Yeah,
got you
you're
to
not
engage
engaging.
a little
That's
bit,
it.
but you're not
Thank
really
you.
willing to
Thank you so
engage.
much, Thunder. Thank you so much for proving
Mr.
my
Bruce,
No.
you
point.
completely missed the point here.
I didn't
Thunder
miss nothing.
brought up
I
the
didn't
verse
miss
where
nothing. He said what is just
God gave
about
a
that.
good and perfect law, correct? He says it's perfect. So God gave a perfect law. In this law, he says that if a man sleeps with the wife of another man, both of them shall be unalive.
Do you guys hear
Why?
your
Hold
words?
on, Mr. Bruce. I'm almost done.
Do you hear your laugh? Sounds
I
Do
need
evil.
you
you
to
hear your
answer.
words?
I need you to answer the question that you've also ignored from me in the beginning. Why did God break his own law, and how can we call that justice?
Like I said, God is the creator. God give, God take away.
Okay, then
So
admit
God
Who
can
are
do
then
whatever.
you?
then
That's
please
why I used
admit
the
that
example
you
earlier for the CEO.
then
How
please
can
admit
an
that
employee
you are
tell the
not going by a
CEO
system
how
of
to run his
justice.
or
You
her
are going
company?
by a system of might makes right.
No, is I'm using the analogy to make you think that there is a
Your
boss,
CEO analogy failed, and we
there
pointed
is
out
someone
why.
above you,
Yeah,
right?
we already shown that your analogy with the CEO was not analogous in several different ways.
Yeah, you
But
failed in your analogy, and you failed in showing the justice in your God's judgments.
So we all
Okay.
understand. We
That's your
all
choice,
understand
man. You
that.
already
We
made your
all
choice not to
understand,
believe
Mr.
in
Bruce.
God. I mean,
Mr.
I'm not
Bruce.
gonna take that away from you.
We all
You
understand that
know,
God. We all
just like
understand
you
the
guys can't
concept
take
that
away my choice
Mr.
for
Bruce.
believing in God.
Okay. So we all understand that the concept that morality starts with God. That if God is all good, then he cannot be criticized. However, you would expect to see somewhat of a moral standard with this being, right?
Yeah, that is moral. God is moral.
Okay. Okay, so we can judge his morality because morality is something that we can measure, right? With our morality against something else and see if we feel like it's better or not.
Yeah, you can judge God however you want, and you come up with your choice whether
Okay.
you want to believe in
And
Him or not.
you already agreed that
That's your
God's
choice.
morality it was
I
bad.
chose to believe that
You
God
already
is
agreed
just.
that God's morality was bad in this situation, right?
In what situation?
Whenever we said that God is sovereign like a king, and he did this, and you agreed that the analogy was analogous, and you agreed that yeah, it wasn't good.
Right. We all feel that way.
So you
That's human
agreed
beings,
You
right?
contradict yourself
But
so
then
much,
I'm
Mr. Bruce.
asking you to look
so
from
how can we
God's
have a
lens.
moral standard in something that
Oh
you
my goodness.
yourself agree that it's bad? How can that be the moral standard? It's barbaric.
Most
How can that be
barbaric.
your moral standard? How can that be good?
Most good.
Well, obviously not this because you agreed that this would have
No,
been a
God,
bad king.
to me, God is good, but to you
No,
guys,
obviously
He's
not
not.
because you agreed that what he did here was bad.
Well, Mr. Bruce,
No, I
earlier
didn't.
we
I say
agreed
what He
that
did is good.
No, you
we
did
agreed
not.
that being
You
just and
use an
fair was
example,
good,
but it's
but
not
you
God that you
can't
were
show
using.
how this is fair and just. So even with the definitions you agreed with me on that, your God fails.
I didn't agree to any of yours.
You did. You agreed to me
No,
that being fair
You
and
didn't
just is
realize
good.
it, but yeah, you
no.
literally agree to all these
I
things.
say God is
And if
just.
you want, I can make a recording out of it. And,
Yeah, you can. I don't care.
Will
okay,
you be
great.
honest that you did say that thing if it can be shown? Because you did.
What did I say?
You
I say
agreed
God is
that
just. You were asking me about
You said
what
that
God
God
did.
would
you
be,
agreed
Was
you
that
it
said that
just?
king
fair
would be
and just
evil.
And I
is
say
good.
yes.
Okay.
I say yes. God,
And
what
you
God
agreed that
did
it was
is just.
analogous. So you agreed that God was sovereign like a king. You agreed that if a king did this, it would be evil. So therefore, aka, you agreed that God did something evil.
No,
And you laughed about it. Like it wasn't a big deal.
no, God didn't do anything evil.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming up, Mr. Bruce. It was a great conversation.
Thank you.